Life is full of mystery. The more you try to unfold it, the more you continue to realize there is more to it. Everything seems normal in this popular hotel in the city. People are coming in from every part of the world, as tonight is the night for the popular GALA night. The hotel has been repainted purposely for this event. The color of the hall looks radiant as every staff seems to be working hard to ensure the event turns out to be better than the previous year. While everyone was busy getting prepared, a voice caught a young man's attention. It was an older woman. "Excuse me, young man, can you help me cross to the other side?" she asked politely. The young man, who looked like someone at the vent of losing an appointment or a dinner, reluctantly agreed to help her without asking further questions, as he forced a smile on his face. "Day could not get any better," he said silently as he helped the older woman and walked away pretty fast as they got to the other side of the road leading to the famous hotel. The woman gave a relieved sigh. "At last," she said as she approached the door of the hotel with her crutches. An old woman who should be in her 80s was limping with her crutches, trying to get into the hotel. Judging by her mode of dressing and her look, what could she be looking for? She seemed to be a beggar or someone from a low-life family. This was the dialogue that transpired between two security officers who were on duty. "Sorry, ma'am, but you can't go in," they said as she approached them. The older woman's countenance changed as she pleaded with the security officers to let her in. Unmoved by her words, they brushed her aside in a bid to let in their customers. The older woman could not hide her emotions anymore. Tears gathered around her eyes. "I own this place," she quickly comments. The officers asked what she had just said, and she repeated herself. Security stares at her from head to toe scornfully, and one of them asks, "Ma'am, would you kindly leave here before I call the cops?" She cried out that she owned the hotel this time. She was very loud that she attracted the attention towards her directly. People started to stop by and ask why the security officers are harassing an old woman on crutches. While some of the guests condemned the officers' cold attitude towards the older woman, some praised them for doing their work diligently, as any beggar shouldn't be allowed into the same hotel where highly respectable personalities exist. "I would rate this hotel 0 star and tell them how bad the hotel has become if this dejected woman is allowed here," an unknown voice amid the gathered crowd roared. "He probably looks like a business person of high profile," as it is known that nothing flies as fast as wrong information. It flies faster than a rocket, making the situation noticeable to the hotel's owner. To appeal to the people about the problem, he comes out. Only to find his grandmother at the center of the situation. He rushed towards her and gave her a big hug. Everyone was astonished, and there was total silence. It was as if a minute silence was being observed for a loved one who had just departed. The security officers were as confused as the guests. Why is the CEO all out and embarrassing himself? Hugging that old wag is the height of it. The expression on the people's faces said it all. The CEO manages the situation by introducing his grandmother to all and orders that the security officers escort his grandma into the hotel for the gala night. She smiles as she approached the door of the office. "A lot has changed here, and I can see you are doing well to keep our family's legacy after all these years. I'm super proud of you, Tony." Tony, the CEO, smiles with a questioning face as he offers his grandmother a glass of water. "Come on, son. I know that look. I might be struggling health-wise, but you should know I will never miss the gala night again this year. It could be my last, you know," she said with worries on her face. But Tony moved closer to her to reassure her that she would not die anytime soon with a warm hug. Tony asked why she had to board a plane alone, risking her health. She told him she was trying to do anything that makes her happy, as happiness increases her lifespan, and to retake a glance at the hotel. They both have a good laugh. "Grandma, I'm not impressed with what happened earlier. I should make some clarifications. Tony requested she stay in the hotel, as there were first-hand situations that he needed to address in front of their VIPs at the event. She said that was fine. She dipped her hands inside her bag to take her med. "I shall wait here for you, son." Tony leaves for the office, but not after instructing the security officers to ensure his grandmother is fine and attend to her need. The older woman's eyes traveled around the room as she was impressed with Tony's development around the hotel. She was pleased with everything her eyes caught, and she knew even Tony's late father, who happens to be her son, would be proud of him. Tony returns to check on his grandma to be sure she's okay. He slightly opens the door and finds his grandma smiling. He chuckled and closed the door behind him. Tony knows the central question will be about the older woman he welcomed outside earlier. He is ready to face it and answer any questions in that direction. He climbs upstage to open the gala night, as it is the hotel's custom. As he approaches the podium, a loud voice throws a question he has been expecting. "Mr. Tony, who was that beggar you hugged outside?" He smiled and requested that the guest remain calm as he explained everything. He gives his opening speech and welcomes everyone who has honored their invitation. When he was done, he decided to talk about the older woman many had met earlier. "So, many who care to know, that was my grandmother, and she is the owner of this hotel." The revelation caught so many by surprise that there was an indistinct murmuring in the hall. Mr. Tony decided it was time to let his grandma give her speech. He invites her especially to the podium in front of the special guests. As she approached the stage slowly with her crutches, she smiled brightly and stood in front. She could not help it as her emotions got the better of her. The number of the crowd moves her. Most people in the event become silent, waiting patiently to hear from the older woman herself. She begins her story after wiping up the tears. "I am Mrs. Williams, the owner of this beautiful hotel, which is managed and well supervised by my grandson. Everything in life comes with a price, and we have to face whatever life throws at us," she says, still maintaining her smiling face. "I am very ambitious, and I always try to beat my husband's success because I strongly believe women can also be seen as equal to men. I think so much about equality. My orientation got the better of me as I slowly began to drift away from my family. I built this hotel and many other companies around the state, forgetting I am needed as a mother to my son and a wife to my husband. Because of my target, I decided not to give birth to another child. At first, my husband strongly opposed it, but he eventually came to terms with me because he is very understanding. Tony's father, who was my son then, hated me so much for the lack of attention and love. This is something I have grown to regret every day. He grew up well through my husband's help and the maid he preferred calling his mother. I didn't seem to care. That was the least of my worries, as I was too occupied with the work that I failed to realize my husband was battling a terminal disease. He kept it away from me to ensure I focused on my ambitions. I could not have been able to save his life, but I could have been there for him when he needed me." At this point, she was getting very teary. Tony immediately recognized the symptoms as her mental illness beginning to swing into action. He rushed towards her, calmed her down, and decided she had had enough for the night. The audience was silent as everyone was touched by her story. They ponder in their minds as they had many questions that needed answers. Did the terminal disease eventually kill her husband? What happened to her son? Mrs. Williams begged Tony to let her continue the story, as that would free her from the heavy burden within her. Tony seemed reluctant to plead, but could not do much as the older woman looked determined. "All right, but you also don't have to do this." She looked at him, patting his back, and made her way to the podium. As she tries to mount the podium, the curious audience starts clapping and is all ready to hear her story to the very last. "I was in my office when I was called by the family doctor, who broke the news of my husband being in a coma to me. On getting there, he explained the situation of things to me, which sounded like a lie to me. 'My husband looks healthy,' I said to myself." She became emotional again. She recounts terrible She cleans up her face and continues. Only then did I realize I had not seen him in a while. I rushed towards the ward and saw him on life support. My ambition ruled me, but I still loved my husband. And after months of looking after him in the hospital, and spending nights with him right beside him, he passed away. My son accused me of being the reason for his death and vowed never to have anything to do with me. Months later, everything seemed odd due to the end of my husband, who was the source of my wisdom and achievement. On the other hand, my son graduated as a business management first-class student, began to do drugs, smoke, drink, and even be accused of being a rapist. He attempted to rape a young lady at that time. His condition worsened when he became an addict. I tried to talk him out of it and be there for him, but he never saw me as his mother. He was in rehab when I learned he had impregnated a lady. I took the young teen in and began to care for her, and she gave birth to my Tony. My son's condition at the rehab grew from worse to worse, as there was no improvement at all. He started falling ill at the rally again. We later discovered that he had been smuggling drugs with the help of a guard. His lungs gradually began to fail. The drug damaged his kidneys. He was released to come home after I pleaded for his release for better treatment. On his arrival home, he was furious about the baby and vowed to deal with the mother. I went out with my grandson, to whom I had promised to dedicate all my time, only to get a call that the house was on fire. The investigation later had it that the fire broke out after my son tried lighting his cigarette in the kitchen after trying to calm his nerves. The maid who was at the home at the time, Tony's mother, and my son all died in the fire outbreak, leaving just my grandson and me against the world. The shock resulted in depression for me and led to my current health condition. The audience feels so sorry about what the older woman had to endure. Her story seems to be a very tragic. They also pitied Tony, who had never had the opportunity to see his parent. The older woman moves close, hugs him tight, and apologizes for taking his life from him. At this point, Tony could not control his tears as he held her close and sobbed into her shoulder. Everyone stood up and clapped as a sign of respect for them holding up strong. The old woman silently sighed, said, "I can get to rest now when I..." She smiled as she makes her way down with Tony holding her right. The older woman's story so inspired many people at the gala that they were able to learn 1 or 2 lessons. Solemn music plays in the background, as most people are left with the thought of not making the same mistake made by the all very costly, like the older woman.